Hello and welcome to JB Squared. If you're new to this show, hey, we're very happy to have you. In fact, our listeners are the ones who named this show. We started this several years ago. I'm JB Hager. I've gone by JB forever. Johan Bruyneel has been nicknamed JB for years before me, just a little bit ahead of me. And so our listeners started calling it JB Squared, and we just ran with it. And what we do here is it's a supplement to the move. We do the move with Lance and George, and Johan joins us on that show on occasion. But what this show does and this platform does is give Johan a chance to just go really, really deep on especially team tactics and what's going on and what he witnesses during the race, which is really interesting stuff. So we are going to get into that with Johan Bruyneel, but first, really quick, I just want to thank our title sponsor for JB Squared for this Tour de France, Ketone IQ, made by HVMN. I think you even have some there with you.
I have some here, JB.
Yeah.
We had some trouble getting it to Europe, but it's here and I'm using it every day. Actually, I'm going to take it right now.
There you go. And if you've been listening to this show for some time, I've been on it for over a year. And I've even said I've had more mental clarity. I was just visiting my doctor before coming out here, and she said, "Do you need a refill on your Adderall?" Which I was on forever. I was on for decades. I was like, I'm good. I don't need it. And I think I attribute it to Ketone IQ, just helping with mental clarity. I do a couple shots, one in the morning, one mid-morning, and it really helps. It has really been a tremendous help. And then, of course, there's all the physical benefits that go with it. But I'm really interested in the mental clarity. Also, if you're interested, a bit of an appetite suppressant. I don't know if you noticed that. Yeah,
absolutely. And on top of that, let's not forget, they are the official ketone sponsor of Visma Lease Bike, of Jonas Vingegaard and Wout van Aert and everybody else. So I think that's worth mentioning.
Yes, it definitely is. You're seeing it all over. I saw some of their promos with Matteo Jorgensen using ketones. So yeah. So anyhow, thank you. We appreciate them helping support this show. And we are going to jump right into this because I'm dying to hear your thoughts and your experience, both as a writer and a director. This was a wild stage one for the Tour de France. Mm-hmm. I mean, possibly you could say, do you remember the whole stage one Opie sign crash? This, in a way, was right up there because it was a lot of carnage and incredibly difficult, and not the way I think many of the riders, if not all of them, they don't really want to start their Tour de France this way. Does that sound correct?
No, it's definitely a very, very hard start for the Tour de France. I mean, 206 kilometers first stage, 3,600 meters of vertical. I think that's about 13,000 feet. That's very unique. Normally, you get to a Grand Tour and you have a time to kind of ride into it. Today there was no riding into it. Super hard. On top of that, the heat was a major factor. It was 36 degrees Celsius. What's that in Fahrenheit? About 90, 95 degrees?
I think they're in the mid 90s.
Yeah. So, super nervous on top of that. The Tour de France starts and, everybody's stressed and the level's super high. So this was a very, very hard stage. Actually, I was surprised that we didn't see more separation. We saw big separation, but there was a group of 40, 45 guys with all the major Tour de France contenders, and we couldn't see any separation or difficulties of anybody. So I think that's good. We want to keep it as tight as possible for as long as possible. But yeah, what a stage! It's definitely a big challenge for the riders to come in. You have to be on top of your game straight away. And it looks like everybody was.
It's definitely a trending to more aggressive stages like this. And we've talked about how they're trending to a little bit more pitchy and shorter. This was not short at all. They were on the bike a long time today.
Yeah, plus I would have to check the official road book, but typically the first stage, and especially when it gets out of a bigger city, they have this really long parade and long neutral zone. And today, I mean, it looked like it was like 30 minutes that they were in the neutral zone. So it was a long day on the bike. And I I think, an amazing outcome because the two riders from DSM, Bardet and Frank van den Broek, were up there, and they made it to the finish barely, but it was a thriller until the end.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, well deserved. I think well deserved. I mean, both of those riders did an amazing job. They were, I mean, the remainder of a breakaway, and I mean, yeah, it's very unique to see two riders of the same team come in together. But you know, if we remember last year, two riders. No, it was not two riders of the same team.
Brothers.
Two brothers who came in.
Yates, which was cool. It was a cool moment. Yeah. And maybe if you can, I know we talked about him quite a bit on the move, but if you could elaborate on Bardet and his career and, you know, and what this means for the French, right?
Yeah.
Because I think we've talked about it on JB Squared in the past. If the French get their victories, it's a very different media type of thing going on.
It is. It's too bad. It's too bad for Bardet. It's not in France, right? It's in Italy.
Yeah.
So, but I did see the Tour de France director Christian Prudhomme and the Tour de France boss Jan Lemonnier after the stage, and they were greeting Bardet, and their face was hurting, so they were smiling so much. So they were obviously super, super happy, and I think it's, you know, it's well deserved for a rider like Bardet, who, you know, he said it's his last Tour de France. Don't know if it's last season, but it could be his last season, or maybe he does next year until the Giro or something. I don't remember, but anyway, he's at the end of his career. He was the big promise for a few years for the French. You know, he was second and third in the Tour de France about 9-10 years ago, and now finally, you know, fourth stage win already in his career. That's, you know, there's not many riders who can say that. But first time yellow jersey, and you know, you can see how much the yellow jersey means for any rider, yeah. But for a French rider, even if it's only one day. Romain Bardet is now a yellow jersey wearer.
He's in a very elite club, yeah.
That's going to stick with him for the rest of his life. So, I mean, to be able to do that in the end of your career is amazing. And you have to give it to the guy. I mean, he fought for this. You know, he came out of the Peloton, went across. Of course, you know, he got some freedom because nobody considers him as a GC threat. So he got away relatively comfort. I mean, I would say with the permission of the Peloton. I mean, I'm not going to say
because he's been a mountains jersey winner before, so maybe they figure he's going for mountain points. Let it go.
Well, right? I think it's been quite a while since Bardet has been like a top 5 contender. So that's why probably nobody really cared too much. But yeah, I mean, the way he bridged across that to that breakaway, and then, I mean, this young rider, Frank van den Broek, I mean, what a story. You know, I remember this guy last year, I think it was last year, at the beginning of the season, he was on a 3rd division team, a small Dutch team. He comes from another sport. I'm trying to remember now, but I'm not sure. But he's not that long yet in professional cycling. He was on a very small team. Then, you know, DSM picked him up at the middle of the season last year on their development team. And now he's on the pro team and first Tour de France. And I mean, what an entry, you know.
Can you imagine your first Tour de France?
He's the sole reason why Bardet has won this stage is Frank van den Broek. I mean, he was out there for such a long time on that breakaway, and the power he still had at the end, and the way he drove Bardet on the flat was incredible. So, I mean, and you know, what a gesture of Bardet, you know, like the first thing he did is he pointed to his team and he said, "Hey, this is you," you know, I mean, so super nice. And it's a team that actually, you know, they've been very, very modest over the last few years, and, you know, to come in like this, with a 1-2, I think that sets the tone for. I mean, this team is now on cloud 9, and they're gonna go for more stage wins.
Well, and there were big teams pulling to catch them. Yeah. Like it was, you know, EF was trying to set up Bettiol, I think, and then Visma wanted to set up Van Aert, who won the field sprint,
and then Little Trek.
They're working hard.
Yeah, I mean, those are three big teams with huge power, and I mean, it was you know, break it or make it, but they made it, you know, and they finished with 5 seconds which is enough. It was actually they had to go so fast until the very end. And the moment Bardet passes his teammate, they were both unable to sprint. They were on the limit. So there was basically riding as fast as you can. And the way he looked at him, I would have loved to see what he said. But it was clear that Bardet is the leader of the team and that he was going to win that stage.
Yeah, and we saw Ben Healy trying to bridge the same way Bardet did and couldn't pull it off. And he's a good rider.
Yeah, no, he went at a moment and he could, sometimes he pulls off these incredible performances, but he was, once he bridged up a bit and then he stayed around 50, 55 seconds, and that you could see that, they were evenly matched. The thing is that Bardet had a teammate, so there was no way he was going to come back.
Not to get too far ahead into stage 2 or anything, but can Bardet hold on to this yellow for any amount of time?
I know that Lance and George think that he can. I'm going to say no. I think Bardet does not arrive in France in yellow, unfortunately for him. But if you look at tomorrow's stage, and especially these 4 climbs in the final of the stage, plus have taken into account the effort he had to do today in the last 40K, let's say,
in the heat,
empty himself. The yellow jersey does obviously give you another level, and you're super motivated. But I think tomorrow on that last steep climb, which they do twice, and I know this climb, it's super hard. It's harder than the Mur de Huy. I think this is Pogacar, Vingegaard, Roglic terrain. They're gonna go for it, and Bardet, he's going to fight for it, but I fear that he's going to pay for today's efforts.
Before we talk about, I want to talk about Mark Cavendish, but also the big question mark, one of the biggest question marks going into this tour was, how is Jonas Vingegaard? Nobody knows.
Yeah.
I know that you see things that others don't see, so during stage 1, what did you see with Vingegaard? It looks very promising from what I witnessed.
The doubts and the question marks we had yesterday, okay, and they're not completely gone, because we have to stick to the facts that, he had this big accident. He was severely injured, took a lot of time to recover, and hasn't raced. But based on what I saw today, I'm going to say 60 to 70% of my doubts that I had yesterday are gone already. Because it takes, the way he was sitting, he didn't do anything, right? But he was following, he was well positioned, never ever looked in any discomfort, looks completely comfortable on the bike, sure of himself. Even when UAE, because with about 75K to go, where we expected that the UAE would try to make the race hard, which they did. They did start to go on a fast pace with the whole team, and that's when we saw all the sprinters or the non-climbers get dropped, including, for example, Mathieu van der Poel, which was, if he gets dropped, it means that it's hard and fast. Mm-hmm. So at no point did I see Vingegaard struggling. On the contrary, he was well positioned. And I think that UAE probably got a little wake-up call, said, oh, this guy's here, he's good. We should not go any further, because I think
a lot of the rumblings were Pogačar needs to bury him in the first week because he's going to get stronger and stronger. So a lot of people were expecting a UAE attack today with Pogačar, but they tested it and it wasn't the time.
They did a test on the moment they had to, because that was the hardest climb, and they had their whole team and they put a really hard pace. So, but then also, once you see that the guy that you don't know how he is responding really well, then it makes absolutely no sense to keep going, because there was 2 second category climbs and then 2 third category climbs, which were easier. And then it was still about 30 kilometers to the finish, which, would have been a suicide attack if Pogačar tries to go away there, and he wouldn't have made it by himself. And so, I think that was a little test from UAE, but They wanted to, put the hurt on their rivals. They put the hurt on the group, but I think they also put the hurt on themselves, because some of his teammates of Tadej Pogacar were struggling. One of them, for example, was Juan Ayuso, who is, a really strong rider, was third in the Vuelta, young. I mean, he's very promising. And I think at some point they saw that he was struggling, and maybe that was also one of the reasons why they backed off a bit, to kind of preserve Ayuso in that main group, because he may be a guy that they can use later tactically in between stage 4 and stage 14 when they have to play certain cards. So I think it was smart from UAE. Pogacar didn't make any efforts, and so he didn't burn any matches. And I think that's what he should do. Really go when it matters and when it's possible. Today there was a possibility because of the hardness of the stage, but if you look at it realistically, there was too much time, too much distance from the last climb, which was not even hard enough to make a difference to the finish. So the risk outweighed the potential benefit, and they made a smart decision to not go for it.
Let's talk about Mark Cavendish. He got a lot of TV time, but not for the right reason today. But it's a good story. So there's going to be cameras on him a lot to following this storyline. But it wasn't just him. There were other sprinters in trouble and just really trying to make the time cut. We saw him literally vomiting, probably from the effects of the heat.
I was worried to see him, to get dropped on that Cat 2 climb. After, I mean, they were on the top at 50K, so it was still 156 kilometers from there to the finish. And you can get dropped and then you can come back and you get in a little group. But the fact that he was vomiting, he was sick, maybe a small heat stroke or something.
Right.
So that was definitely a big concern. And I think he fought himself through the stage with the help of teammates, of course. But yeah, I mean, he was never going to win the stage today. But the fact that he got in trouble so early, and I mean, I would have to think that if he doesn't have this kind of illness, then he would have stayed with a good group and made it to the finish comfortably. Now he made it to the finish, but I'm not gonna think it's comfortably, because they had to, finally, I think he had like 7 or 8 minutes spare time to make it within the time cut. But still, it's not a good start. But hey, I heard that he made a surprise appearance on the move.
He did. He FaceTimed while we were mid-show, if you want to go check that out. And I was expecting him to be, pretty upset about how the day went. And you can just see where that experience comes in. He has a positive attitude.
Yeah.
He can mentally put this behind him. Good spirits. Felt fine. I did not expect that, but that's where that seasoned pro come in. He knows what's ahead of him, right? Oh yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, no, listen, I mean, he has a great mindset, otherwise he wouldn't be here, he wouldn't be doing it. So, right. So yeah, I mean, hopefully he can recover. That's one of the other things of the tour, that, the speeds of these stages are so hard, so fast. Tomorrow's a hard stage also. So if you need to recover from a little illness, you can kind of sometimes use a bit of downtime. I mean, relatively speaking, but it's going to be a hard day for him tomorrow also.
One of the other things I wanted to touch on that you mentioned in the preview show, because we got a good look at Jonas today, like you said. Pogačar held off on attacking today. But on the preview show, you shared, and we'll just touch on it really quick, some really interesting stats about the dominant Pogačar we saw in the Giro and where he is now coming into the Tour.
Well, this is, of course, this is all theory. And, numbers are numbers. And then, you come into the race and then you see, I have done all the work. I have these great numbers, but hey, my rivals also have the same numbers. So, I got this information from somebody who's close to Pogačar and has access to his data. So I got told that he improved his power by between 13 and 15 watts compared to the Giro, which is a big number. That's a big improvement. And he also lost 1.5 kilo. He's 1.5 kilo lighter apparently than during the Giro. So from 65.5 kilos to 64 kilos. I mean, if you look at him today, I looked at him he looks really. He looks skinny. He's ready. He looks ripped. And then on top of that, also apparently they shaved off 750 grams of his time trial bike, which is massive, especially in view of the last time trial, which is a hard time trial. So, more power and less weight. That's not good news for the rest. But he's not alone. There's other guys who did the job and their homework. So it's I think the challenge for Pogačar is going to be how to manage this. I want to say 2-month period. Because it's from the beginning of the Giro till the end of the Tour. It's 2 months. It's or even more. And so that's the challenge. That's the challenge, is how can he still be at this amazing level in the third week? The data would say that it's possible, but the Tour is a special animal. And in the Tour, everything's different.
Do you think we're going to see the most controlled, tempered Pogačar we've ever seen? Like you said,
I hope so.
They backed off today. Again, he's doing the double this year.
They did back off, but little detail, he sprinted. He was second, so he went for that bonus for the third place. So that's something that normally he shouldn't be doing, because when you sprint, you take a risk. You can hook into each other. So he's a racer.
Yeah,
Once there's numbers on his back, he just goes.
So had the breakaway been caught, we would have seen him mixing it up with everybody.
Oh yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe he isn't going to back off that much, is what I'm hearing.
I think it's difficult. I think he's difficult to control. It's one of those typical guys, super talented, super strong, big champion. And the main job of a manager or a director or a coach is to basically keep those guys on a short leash and just let it go whenever it matters. And it's a constant, always slowing them down, be conservative, think about the rest, think about tomorrow, think about the team. That's a challenge with a rider like Pogačar. That's also why he's such an attractive bike rider. He just, there's always something going on, always some show that is when Pogačar is in the race.
Even if he is animated and blows himself up, it's good for us, the spectator.
Yeah,
somebody like that. A couple other things we want to talk about. You wanted to mention a couple of riders, young riders who were very promising, who lost a lot of time on stage one. Yeah. That has to be incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, mainly, the two young French talents, the three actually. There's of course David Gaudu, who has been the French hope for the last 3-4 years. He was, I think, a few years ago, he was 5th in the Tour. I just checked today; he lost 29 minutes. That's a disaster, like a disaster. Then Lenny Martinez, he's a really young guy, first Tour de France, came in late in the selection, pure climber, probably not here for GC, but also lost 29 minutes. And then Romain Grégoire, who is the other big French talent, young guy, also in the same group. So these three riders, on top of that, from Groupama FDG, had a disastrous start. So obviously that's not good. It's really, the morale must be low. There's no more hope for anything in GC, not even a top 10. They can forget about this. And so, they have to change their tactics already after stage one. So that's very frustrating for them and for their team. And as a French team, that's a big blow.
They have to become stage hunters, right?
Yeah.
And one last thing that we didn't get to in the preview show, it's worth touching on because it's been getting some press, is this Visma Control Center. I don't know much about it, but fill me in on what is the potential controversy with that.
Yeah, well, Visma came with, and I think it's a great idea. Actually, they obviously promoted it. Also, it's also a marketing move, right? Because Visma is seen and considered as cutting edge on everything. They think about everything. They leave no stone unturned.
The way we used to talk about Sky that way, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So they came with this. They call it the control center. It's a big van they have on site with all the potential technology in there, screens, computers. There's people in there who analyze the data live from the race, and then they communicate whatever they find to the team car in order that they can make better decisions. This has been happening for a long time, more or less advanced, but the fact that it's now on site in a van. I saw a statement afterwards from the UCI saying that the UCI will start an investigation into this new idea to see if it doesn't infringe any of the UCI regulations. And I said, what? I mean, listen, for Visma, it's great because they're not infringing any rules, but it's, typical UCI, and my position on them. They're my favorite federation. They just have to, it's like, this is like a statement. Okay, you know what? We're going to investigate because you didn't come to us with the idea and ask for our permission. It's the same. It's always the same. They own the sport, or they think they own the sport, but they also think they own the lives of the people who are in the sport. And so they're not going to be able to say that it's not approved, whether they like it or not. I mean, it's been like this forever. I mean, I remember, JB, in during the last years, we were one of the first teams who had a private cook for our team. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, other people started to do the same, other teams. And then at some point we wanted to introduce a kitchen truck where, because we wanted to eliminate all potential things we couldn't control, like, the food you get in the hotels, whether it's good quality, bad quality, expired sometimes, sometimes the kitchens in France, with all due respect, some of them are really, it's better you don't look into the kitchen where food come from, because otherwise you wouldn't eat, so we had this whole plan, and it got not allowed, because they said, why you can't do this, because other teams don't have it. And they came with the excuse, I don't remember now, it was the UCI or ASO, it might have been ASO, who didn't allow us to do this because they said that it was another vehicle, not a big vehicle, and we would take up too much space on the parking of the hotels whenever we were with other teams. So now every team has a kitchen truck. Every big team, none of these riders eat in the restaurants of the hotels. They eat in their truck.
I remember years ago we talked about it was still Sky, I think, we started doing their own laundry in their trucks. You know what I mean? And separating it.
That's been forever. That's been forever. But they had that. Then they had a washing machine for every single rider. That's
what it was. Yeah. Yeah. And they found some improvements, but
to come back on the Visma control center, I mean, it's happened. I mean, every team has their external sources that are not in the race to analyze or check things that you can't see from the car. If you have one or two people that you trust their analysis, they can see things on TV that you can't see from the car. Mm-hmm. I keep saying, I mean, certain people are not going to agree with that, but I keep saying that in order to have that kind of vision, you need to have a feeling for what it's like riding a bike. You have to have raced yourself, and you have to be able to see little things in cyclists that a normal non-cyclist would not see. Yeah, mm-hmm. But I had 3 people before that I could call, or sometimes they called me or they sent me a message. Hey, I don't know if you're watching TV, but Ulrich's, just so you know, Ulrich's about to crack. You can see it on his style, you can see what's going to happen. So I got these kind of external information. So that's now what Visma is doing. They brought everything together. I personally think you could do it better from an office. They don't necessarily
they don't need to be at the race, right?
At the race. Right. The only thing that I can see that could be an interest that the people who are actually analyzing the data then have also the after the race contact with the riders, and they get their input of what they see, because there's no better input than a guy who's living it, right? You can check out things and you can say, you can analyze this, and then you get the version of the cyclist, and it's completely different. So I think that's probably the advantage of being there, but you could do this perfectly from afar from the race.
Yeah, shame on them for doing some high-level coaching mid-sport.
Well,
every sport in the world, the coaches are part of the...
if the thing is with cycling and with organizations that think like dinosaurs, like the UCI, is like the moment you stand out and you do something that nobody else has thought about or that they didn't think about, you're the bad guy.
Yeah.
And then they need to put the pressure on you and say, hey, you know what, we will invest. Okay, you know what, we'll allow it, but next time come to us first before you do this. That's the key.
And a lot of organizations need to justify their existence all the time. There's people trying to keep jobs, right? It's like your local, let's not totally fix this homeless problem because I'm getting paid to consult on how to fix it. Okay. Anything else before we jump onto this Ventum Trivia? Somebody's going to be picking up a brand new NS1 road bike. I think we covered all your...
I think we've covered most of I think so.
Okay. All right. Well, cool. Let's jump onto this right now. And every day we'll give out Ventum Trivia. You can enter every day. You can log in and enter every single day. And every time you answer the question, then it goes into the drawing. So more opportunities, the more you do it. Stage 1 question. Outside of France, name 5 other countries that the tour has started from. Okay. If you've been watching, one of them was today. So, and you have time to look it up, find the answers. We don't mind. And go to ventumracing.com/themove, and you can enter to win that NS1 that we'll give away on the last day. All right. And thanks again to Ketone IQ. I forgot to mention this earlier. I recommend subscribing for a number of months. You'll feel the effects over time. 30% off your first subscription order plus a free 6-pack when you use the link ketone.com/themove. And if you have questions specifically for Johan, I absolutely welcome these. Send it to themove@wedo.team. And a very important reminder, there's a little bit of confusion out there. Outcomes now lives in the same place. The Move, JB2, Outcomes, all the shows you want to get your total Tour de France coverage in the same place. So,
and not to forget for the Spanish-speaking people, La Movida every day, also with Victor Hugo Peña. He's live at the Tour de France, so we'll get some really good inside information from there, and actually going to record that show right after we finish this one.
And I intentionally didn't ask you who you think is going to win tomorrow, because I'm going to reserve a lot of that for Outcomes. You guys go deep on the favorites and the wild cards. It's you and Spencer Martin. It's a great show. I definitely recommend listening to it. If you don't get to it by the end of your day, you can listen to it in the morning before you watch the stage or whatever it works. But it's...
And if you want to place a little bet, we give good information.
Yeah. And I always say this, if you're not into sports betting, you guys do help with picks for that, but it's also your insight on who might get results on a stage, especially as we get farther into the tour, is really good. It makes watching it that much more exciting. Johan, we got through it. Our first JB2 of 2024 Tour de France. Thank you very much for your expertise, and we'll talk tomorrow.
Okay. Speak tomorrow. Bye.